Okay, I'm going to invite my panelists to come have a seat up here. And while they are coming up, I just wanted to reflect on what we're going to be talking about today, which is growing in community. So this is going to be a conversation, and I've had the privilege of having conversations with each of them, and I am excited for what you all will hear. When I talk to people about climate action, oftentimes people come to me because of my background in sustainability, and they're like, what should I be doing in this space? And what I tell them is what I will tell you that applies to this as well, is that it's really about finding the intersection of three things. So if you will imagine three intersecting circles, so you all have plates, so you can imagine what those three intersecting circles can look like, to answer these three questions for yourself. So first is, what is the work that you think needs to be done? Second is, what are you good at? And third is, what brings you joy? And the intersection of those three things is where we need you in this work. And I think we just heard about Stu, and he found that intersection and was really able to thrive and influence so many other people. And you will hear the unique intersections of those three questions from each of our panelists as well. So we are going to transition. I think we have a couple more mics as well. Nope, not that one. Okay, that one's live, just available. We'll get one more. Thank you. We'll pass that one down. Okay, so here we are. Picture this as around a fireplace or something. We're going to have a good conversation. Okay, so it is my pleasure to introduce our panel here. So we'll start to my left. Raymond Forstater is with the Sunrise Movement of KC. We have Thomas Smith, who is with the KC Food Hub and KC Tenants. We have Star Neely, who's the Executive Director of Global One Urban Farming. And we have Ryan Sorrell, who is the founder of the KC Defender. So this is who we'll be in conversation with today. And we are going to start at the beginning. So we're going to explore some key moments or seasons or things coming together that led you to this point. So I'm going to start with Star. How did tomatoes play a role in your journey here?
So I love tomatoes, and my grandmother grew up with buying a lot of tomatoes and keeping them in the fridge, and I was the one that was going in there getting them all. And she would ask, "Did you get those tomatoes?" And I'd be like, "No, I didn't eat those tomatoes." And she'd stick out your tongue, and I would get these white bumps on my tongue from having so many tomatoes. And so as I grew into this love of tomatoes, my husband, he's up there, he found out that I love tomatoes, and he said, "Girl, when we move, I'm going to put you a garden in." And this was in 2010, and so we've been growing tomatoes ever since.
And Star, tell us a little bit more about what happened when you did start to grow that garden in your yard. Where were you getting those plants from next, and what happened?
So we started growing around 2008. At first, I was a massage therapist, and I went to massage therapy school, and I found out that health is wealth, right? And so I started finding ways that I could change and better my health, and one of those was to grow my own food. I started out in a pantry line trying to figure out where my next meal was going to come from at the time, and I decided to grow my first plant, my first herb. And I was going down to the city market, and we met a gentleman there, Fred Mercer, and he asked us, what are you getting all these plants for? And we were like, we're going to brand Star's fried green tomatoes. We're going to make it big out here. And he said, well, come on out to my farm in St. Joe, and we'll show you how to germinate seeds. And so my husband and I went out to St. Joe, and his wife, Helen, and Fred, they taught us how to germinate seeds. They walked us through the germination process. And from there, we started teaching inside of schools. We were inside of African Center College Preparatory Academy, and we were inside teaching pre-K through fifth graders. We were volunteering under Dr. Polk, and we were just teaching the process of germinating seeds and teaching the children where their food comes from. That school is right across the street from the Kansas City, Missouri Zoo. And so my son ended up leaving that school. We were there K through fifth grade, and he went over to Kaufman School. And when he went over to Kaufman School, we followed him. I followed her. And so when we got over to Kaufman, we taught Garden Club for a couple years there. And from there, we went over to Kip Casey Legacy High School, and we were able to teach high schoolers how to make oils, how to do soaps, how to think about starting their own businesses, bakery businesses, drinks, whatever it is they could think of. And we did 5 garden boxes, and we started growing food there. And so a lot of the germinated seeds that we did inside of the ACE school, we were able to spread them out in the community. There was also a half-acre church where we started feeding the pantry from that church nearby. So we learned a lot from Fred and Helen Mercer, and they have still trained me today. So I continue to show them what we're working with.
Thank you, Star. So I want to go to Raymond next. Your work with Sunrise connects some dots that people may not know are connected. So you talk about transportation and food and resilience. So when did you first realize that those were things that were connected and really inseparable from each other?
For me, I think the first look I got of that is when we, with Sunrise Movement, started a community fridge on the 18th and Quindaro block in Kansas City, Kansas, connecting with folks directly in the neighborhoods there and learning about the experience of if you live in that neighborhood, if you don't have a car, your nearest grocery store is a 45-minute walk away each direction. You know, you think about what it takes to feed a family and to get what you need to access things like fresh food. If you don't have a car in that situation, especially thinking about the weather, elements, seasonally, what it means to have to travel for hours to make your food trips and things like that. What will actually keep in that time if it's 100 degrees out? What will actually keep in that time if you're trying to make that walk while you're freezing? How much can you actually carry with you? So really made it clear the limit that folks have based on their proximity to fresh food. You know, what are they able to put on the plates for their families if they don't have a car, if they can't access things, that aren't within a reasonable walking distance to them.
Thank you, Raymond. And can you tell us a little bit more about some of the work that Sunrise does related to advocating for transportation, and then how you bring food into those conversations as well, and even the meetings?
For sure, yeah. So we really value and prioritize giving bus riders a seat at the table. So historically, a lot of the decisions around many issues, transportation included, these decisions are being made without the people that are most directly impacted by what are the outcomes. So what we do, we host regular town halls for bus riders to come together and build power with one another, connect and understand the power that they can hold collectively. And as a part of that, we also incorporate grocery stations within those meetings. So we will provide groceries to people that attend the meetings because in order to be able to attend and participate and advocate for themselves, it can make a huge difference to be able to save that trip to the grocery store. So if they can make this a night where they can learn, they can connect with people who have shared experience with them, and they can get their groceries out of it, it means they don't need to either attend and forego that trip to the grocery store or have to work around it, because for folks that are transit dependent, the idea of having time is so valuable, whether it's time to go get what you need from the store, time to actually prepare what it is that you have. So we incorporated our grocery stations in our town halls to be able to kind of have people save a trip, have 2 for 1, and still be able to participate and attend and lighten some of those barriers to participation.
Great, thank you. So now let's learn a little bit more about Ryan. So Ryan, the Casey Defender that you founded is a media space. What pulled you into food?
Yeah, I think so. In addition to our media organization, we were founded in 2021, but that's about half of our organization. The other half is what we call community programs. And so, under that community programs, we have what we call a mutual aid team. And so, back in 2022 is when we started to do what we called grocery buyouts. And those essentially we would raise money just by posting on Instagram. We would crowdfund anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000, usually pretty quickly. And we would just go to a grocery store in a black neighborhood and just stand at the checkout line and give black people money while they were checking out at the grocery store. And for us, that's like part of, we call it mutual aid because it's part of an ultimate organizing strategy, because for a lot of people, it's difficult to organize within their community if you work 2 or 3 jobs. I think as Raymond was already mentioning, worrying about where the next meal comes from can make it very difficult to go to like meetings in the community. And so for us, that was a way to interact with people in the community. It was a way to alleviate some of people's immediate needs so that they would have more capacity, hopefully, to be able to organize within the community. That wasn't like a necessary expectation, but I mean, ultimately, we were just giving it away just because, but we would hope that people would be interested, and some people did end up joining our organization. So that was kind of the initial entry point, I would say, for us around food. But over time, we started to feel like those were kind of one-off interactions with people. Sometimes we would see the same people as we continued to do it, but we wanted to have a more meaningful relationship with people in the community. And so last year was when, number one, whenever the current administration began to slash a lot of these very critical programs and a lot of these just grant funding that a lot of, whether it's from organizations like Ivanhoe Neighborhood Association, from KC Black Urban Growers, these organizations that are very critical for our community, started to see this grant funding not be as accessible. And so we held a town hall pretty early last year at what we called the emergency town hall, and we brought together a lot of the people in the black grower community, and that was really I'm new to all of this still, and that was like my entry point, just being able to meet a lot of the people in the black grower community, to know where all these different black farms were. I wasn't even aware of that beforehand, and so that was, for our organization, that was like an entry point for us. And from those relationships that we were able to build during that town hall, that was able, which I think I could speak a little bit to later, but that was kind of how from those relationships that we were able to build at that point in time from that town hall, even though nothing immediately came out of the town hall, we had built those relationships, which later ended up growing into what we call the Hamer Free Food Program, which we can talk a bit more about.
Great, thank you, and we will definitely come back to that. Okay, so now Thomas, the Casey Food Hub is a co-op of farmers, but it also has really close ties to the Casey tenants. Can you tell us a little bit about those two organizations and how they are connected?
Yeah, a farmer co-op is just farmers coming together. We're trying to aggregate, market, and distribute to make it easy for farmers to sell their product, and give that access to the farmers as much as possible. Katie Nixon's in the back, actually. She's one of the 5 founding farmers, and it was all farmer-led. And that's all about trying to create better outcomes for our farms, better outcome for agriculture, food, all of that. And if we look at, the hierarchy of needs, the other most needed thing is shelter. And so it's no surprise that a co-op of farmers coming together trying to improve the conditions of farming in our communities would come together with a union of tenants. The KC Tenants is again, led by tenants, founded by tenants, I believe 2018, 2019, to try to create better outcomes, better conditions for our tenants across the metro. Not everyone can own their home, and we shouldn't expect that. And so people who are renting where they live shouldn't have to worry about bed bugs or worry about their leaky faucet or worry about any of that, or worry about that their landlord's gonna, bring up their rent by double year over year because they want to make it as an investment property. And so tenants have come together and said, just similar to labor organizing, where people in a workplace are coming together, people in a building that are renting their, where their homes come together and say, we're not going to let this one person who holds all the power, the landlord, go after us. And so, that can look like just coming together and having that conversation with the landlord and empowering yourselves like that. But it also can look like strikes, and that's a rent strike. And we actually just completed our last, one of our third and larger rent strike in Bone Towers down in Raytown or Raymore. I was confusing the two. Yeah. And that ended up ending in a negotiated lease for our tenant members that was $90 to $150 cheaper per month. And that was won by the tenants, striking and putting that solidarity together and fighting for their homes. And just as much as those tenants are fighting for their homes, farmers are fighting to put food on the table of those community members and to continue their livelihoods farming. And so it's no surprise that two, bottom-up organizations like the Food Hub and like Casey Tenants can come together to collaborate, connect, and see where we can bridge those gaps as much as possible.
Thank you. As you can hear, there's a lot of power building that's happening with everyone on this stage, and a real demonstration of it's one thing to like care about an issue, but it's another thing to do something about that. And so thinking about, I was talking with someone earlier about she was just new into the space, and she was starting to tell me what she was working on, and we talked about how like it's one thing to start on your own. You can always start something on your own, but you can't sustain it on your own for very long. And so this growing in community is really necessary for this work, and building power in those communities is a key component of that. When people, and anyone can start off this piece of the conversation, when people first enter into your spaces, what helps them move from caring about these issues to like believing that they can actually like make a difference in these spaces?
So for us, it's community events. We do events called Kansas City Jazz in the Garden, where we invite the community in for live jazz, food, fun and games. We also offer corporate health therapeutic massages. So people get really interested in us providing that service. I was an 18-year massage therapist, and so before that I was a construction worker, and I did heavy highway and bridge work for 10 years before becoming a massage therapist. And so I think hearing our story and my background and knowing that you can start somewhere, like we did, we just sometimes pass out a seed kit, or we just pass out some knowledge. The seed kit may have a couple labels, some soil, and a pot, and that's how we got started. And I think passing along my story, sharing that story with other people helps them to understand that their passion, their niche, whatever they're excited about, can too be put into fruition if they just start with something small. And it takes small steps. We didn't have volunteers at first, and now we service over about 700 volunteers each year, along with Cultivate KC MVP program. We also, we didn't have funders. I took my last check from Ford Motor Company for about $2,500, and I purchased 5 lots in 2018. And so that's how we got started. Just taking what you have and putting it down on paper, put your ideas down. You talk about your ideas, you share it with the community, and you see what you can do. And then after, you see the empowerment that you can spread across the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. For Sunrise, we are on a local level, totally volunteer-run organization. So, coming into it, I think what's really important for our folks is to remain grounded in the version of ourselves that we came into the movement with. So, thinking about the hunger for change, the excitement, the passion, and understanding what it looks like to help people channel that. So, like Star mentioned, like small steps are big, and also letting people know that you are coming into this space with everything that you need to make a change. You know, there might be some nitty-gritty details about levers of power that you might learn some stuff about, but ultimately when you're bringing passion, when you're bringing your skills and experience, your story, that really is the most important thing. And then leading with that and understanding that there will be a lot to learn, but also feeling confident to ask questions. And as someone who is more experienced, you know, being a helping hand and helping people understand what it is that they can do to take those things one step at a time to ultimately become strong leaders themselves.
Thanks.
Yeah, for Casey Tenants and that collaboration with Casey Food Hub, it comes, we move with intention. There's only so much we can do as tenants. You have to make sure you're making the right choices as much as possible. And so it's moving with intentionality, but it's also moving with only as fast as trust can grow. And so when we were doing our connections between the Food Hub and Casey Tenants, it started with us talking about and going to the base and these, monthly in-person base meetings where we all meet at the bottom of the church, all these wonderful tenants who are trying to fight for better livelihoods. And we're talking about what we could need. And obviously, around this time last year, egg prices started getting kind of ridiculous. And we went to the base as a representative of the Food Hub and said, our local farms would much rather get you local eggs that aren't going to cost an arm and a leg. And we started an egg buying club with the Casey Tenants Union, where every month you could get really affordable local eggs when you came to the base meeting. And that improves trust because then people are coming more to the base meeting because they want the local eggs, and then they're staying for the conversation and such. And it's kind of a elevating intentionality for that. And that trust then was able to grow into something so much larger that couldn't have happened if we weren't doing that buying club, if we weren't showing up when we said we'd show up. And it ended with November, with the SNAP pause from the federal government. We ended with doing a We Feed Us program, which is Casey Tenants feeding ourselves with local farm products. And so every Sunday in the month of November, we delivered to unionized apartment buildings across the metro using Casey Food Hub vans, the warehouse we're leasing with Canby's Markets, and then a few other partners. And Casey Tenants members came and volunteered and packed the boxes. We got local farm product into those boxes and then delivered straight out to unionized apartments, 8 different apartments across the metro. And when we're talking about CSAs, a weekly CSA of 500 boxes going to 500 different families, impacting 2,500 people is significant. And it can't happen if we're not building the trust, building that community. And that ended up netting local family farms $50,000 in purchases in November. And that was the tenant union buying that produce because they saw the value in it and they wanted to give that dignity, high quality produce to union members across the metro.
Thank you.
I can speak briefly to ours. I think for me personally, it has just been getting connected to people who have been in the space and doing this work for a very long time. So I know when we began to transition from wanting to do this grocery buyout program that we were originally doing to wanting to establish more meaningful relationships, we, as I mentioned, that's when we decided to start what we called the Hammer Free Food Program, and that was when we collaborated with Ivanhoe Neighborhood Association was one of our partners, Ms. Star Royce was one of our partners, all of the black farms in Kansas City, we were able to, for the first time ever, bring all of the black farms together and launch this free food box program that we also launched pretty much immediately after the SNAP cuts went into place, and also immediately after the Sunfresh on 31st and Prospect closed down. And we were able to deliver. First, we sourced the food from all of the local black farms who are our partners, and then we were able to distribute food to families that lived within a 1-mile radius of that Sunfresh on 31st and Prospect. But that program in and of itself, we were only able to put together because I went to people like Alana over here who helped us put that program together, Miss Dina Newman. We just began talking about the idea, and they had much more knowledge than me about it, and they knew, already had the connections. This is something that Miss Dina Newman had been wanting to do for a very long time. And so just by me talking to them, we were able to make that kind of program happen. And I think secondly, we also did a grocery box program. We were also inspired by the We Feed Us program. And I was able to talk to Thomas, and we were able to do that program. We helped deliver food boxes in the month of November because Thomas and the KC Food Hub allowed us to use their truck to pick up food from the Sunfresh on Blue Parkway. And again, we distribute that to black families across the KC Metro. So I think just all in all for us, it's been learning from people. We're very new to the space. Again, we're primarily a media platform. We're also a community organization. We know that this is not our area of expertise, and so we want to connect with the other black organizations that are already doing food work. And I think the last piece that I'll mention is that for a lot of people, I think, in the black community, which is why I love what you mentioned, Ms. Starr, about making this information accessible, especially to younger people, because something that I've personally experienced, and I know a lot of people in the black community have experienced, is this kind of trauma around even agriculture because of our history. And so me being able to...
What history are you talking about?
Yeah.
Just name it.
History of slavery, obviously. Also, shout out to the 100-year anniversary of Black History Month. Shout out Dr. Carter G. Woodson. But because of this very traumatizing history that we as black people have experienced around agriculture, a lot of us want nothing to do with it. We've never, before the Hamer Free Food Program, I literally did not know anything at all about planting. I didn't know germination, seeding, any of this stuff. So that was literally my first time. As we were putting the program together, I was also, along with everyone else, learning all of these things. And so I think making that information accessible for us is something that is very important because, it's not really introduced to us.
Thank you. And would you be willing to talk more about what your experience was like when you actually went to a farm?
One of my favorite ones was going to Ophelia's Blue Vine Farm with Mike Rollins. I don't know if anybody knows him. He has a lot of amazing energy, and he just recently started. First he has this big greenhouse thing that's on 18th and Vine, and so we walk in and he just is telling us about all the plants. He shows us the tomato and how if it doesn't bust or if it when you drop it, it's supposed to bust at a certain something. I don't know exactly how it works, but he was just walking through, and it was just beautiful to be able to see all of these plants, to see black people growing all of these plants especially, I think is just something that was beautiful. He showed us his chickens. As we went there, that was the first time that his chickens were laying eggs, and so that was a huge moment for him. And I also went to Young Family Farm, and they were able to tell us about the history of that neighborhood, how the family, they actually helped stop a lot of violence back in the 90s and going into the 2000s simply by creating a farm right there. And so I think just hearing those stories is also just a lot of oral history. It's being able to be in community in the moment with the people who we were doing the program with. I think all of that it just felt like a beautiful thing to be a part of.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And Star, building off of that, I know one of the things that we talked about before was when people come to your space and they experience almost like they can breathe for the first time. Will you talk a little bit about, I know you talked about like nutrition as health, but will you talk about like the mental health component to your space?
I think people don't realize that they need the outdoors. They need to know about the benefits of the food they're eating and how healthy it is for them. They need to see me as a Black woman growing food. Um, and so they need to be able to tap into some of their own ideas and things that they have been interested in doing, and then seeing that my story is this story of being emancipated at 16, getting my diploma at 16, and still finding a way to create something for myself that's successful. That shows them empowerment. That gives them an opportunity to go out and figure out what it is they want to do. What is it that they love? What is it that could make them feel free and successful, and take a hold on their life, because finding out that you can grow your own food just by a simple space in your yard, that's huge. It's so many people out in pantry lines and don't know where their next meal is going to come from. So to see the story, and we're right in the middle of a food desert, USDA defined food desert in Kansas City, and like they just closed the Leon's grocery store, I don't know, a few years back. So that made it even worse. A lot of people don't have transportation to get back and forth to a grocery store. And so I'm in the middle of the neighborhood with some land that was a dumping site that we transformed into a community garden. And so them seeing that, I think, empowers them to know that they can start from the bottom and build something up.
So we've heard, and you all have experienced, like how powerful food work is. But we also know that it comes at a cost and it's not easy. What's the part of this work that doesn't get talked about enough?
So what doesn't get talked about is the burnout. What does not get talked about is there's grants that need to be done. There's seeds that need to be watered. There's volunteers that need to be scheduled. There's an event that needs to be planned, and all these things that need to be done at once. And it's sometimes only you. And so what's interesting is we do try to find skills in the community and let people see that they have skills and passions, and we try to bring in those skill sets to help us, but it's not always available at the time that you need it, or now you have to plan a way to figure out how to put it into place so that it's effective for the whole community. And it's difficult, and it does take a turn on your mental health. And everybody in the community suffers because they're looking at you to make a difference, and you don't exactly know how. You wasn't raised with someone taking you through the steps of how do you start a 501c3 nonprofit? How do you reach out to the community and get help? Where do you get the funds from? Nobody's coming to me and saying, hey, here's a grant you can write and let me help you write it, So it does get tough in the community, finding the different connections to pull together so that you can have a successful farming nonprofit operation yourself.
Thank you.
Just continuing in on that, on the burnout and how, we live in such a individualistic society, and that's definitely what the food hub with the co-op and bringing together farmers to solve a problem, and then the union, the KC Tenants Union, bringing together people and trying to fight against this individualism. But even when we're trying to build programs like the We Feed Us program, it can still oftentimes fall onto the individual and create such massive burnout. When we were running it in November, I still have to work for the food hub, and so I'm working at that warehouse Monday through Friday, And then Saturday and Sunday, I'm doing the We Feed Us program for Casey tenants in the same warehouse, meaning I'm going to that warehouse where I work every single day of the week, obviously for something I deeply believe in, getting local farm product to union members, one of which was on a strike during such a time of crisis. And I was able to, lean into that idea of collectivism as much as possible. And though I was the one who helped write the proposal, me and Tara from Casey Tenants wrote that proposal and launched this whole thing that ended up feeding 500 families every week. We only wrote that in 6 days. We wrote it in 2 days and then started it all up in 6 days, and we launched it within 6 days. And so that's a lot of work at the beginning, but we were able to find people in our union and trust them and try to get that burnout down for not only me, but for so many other organizers from Casey Tenants who are putting so much work and effort into doing these. Because what else is a union if we're not going to trust our union members? And that's the same thing with community. What else is a community if we're not going to trust our community members? We can't save ourselves by ourselves. We have to bring in everyone together. And we really saw that firsthand from We Feed Us, that you can't feed a village without a village, And so really need to lean in on that and stop the self-doubt and stop the, it's not going to go right if you're not doing it by yourself or anything. Or, I'm the individual, I know how to do it, I'm going to get it done. You need to trust. And it's a really hard process of learning to trust. But yeah, that's kind of something I feel like is not talked about too much.
Thank you, Thomas. Ryan or Raymond, anything to add?
Mine's pretty quick. It's pretty similar to burnout, but it's just like, I remember when we were wanting to transition to our grocery box program around November, we started off, because this was like our first test run pilot program, we wanted to feed 50 families. And so we put this call out onto social media, trying to find Black families who lived in a particular geographic area who would be interested, and we had like 150 people immediately within like 24 hours or something respond. And so my team got mad at me because I responded to 100 of the people saying like, yes, we can do this, even though originally we only said we would do 50. And so we had to like scramble and figure out like all these logistics. And it just shows the need, how big the need is. And we as an organization almost like in that point in time overextended ourselves a little bit to make that happen. And I mean, the need right now I think is probably only going to increase for the foreseeable future. And so I think, to Thomas's point, to Ms. Starr's point, creating like these networks, growing deeper in community, and seeing how we, as a community, without having to, I mean, it would be great if we can rely on external systems to feed us, as they probably should, but until that happens, I think we have to be able to like build these networks from the ground up, and it's difficult, and there's a lot of logistics. I think that's the last piece I'll say is, of course, with these kinds of like food programs, there's like a huge amount of logistics that have to happen. You have to have boxing people, you have to have transportation, you have to have people who know which houses to go to, and text messaging people to let them know, because we delivered it directly to people's doorsteps. And so I think also those kind of logistical aspects are challenging also.
I just want to, can I
go
just
ahead.
say one thing? Ryan's underplaying how incredible logistics he was on this box program. I was there for that first one. He somehow got like 40 different cars to come and pick up 4 boxes each, and all of them had different destinations. It was incredible. And so I just want to give my claps off to you.
And that's also a reminder of that, again, we need all kinds of talents in this space. So we need logistics experts, we need finance experts. And so as you're interacting with people who are maybe outside of this room, or speaking to the friends in this room that are not farmers but believe in this work, think about like what skills and talents that you do have that you can lend to this work. You don't have to be the grower. I'm not going to be the grower. I'm not good at that. But what other talents can you lend to support the food system and to support local growers? So that makes me think of one more thing, Thomas, that you shared in terms of how things are better together. Will you talk a little bit more about the food hub and its recent move to a different location and how that move changed what was possible?
Yeah, so not too recent. We moved in April 24, which in the grand scheme of things of seasons, I guess, pretty recent. But we've moved into the same warehouse as Canby's Markets, alongside KC Can Compost, Urban Produce Bush, which I see Koresh right there. They're incredible gleaners, and then KC Food Hub, along with a few other partners. And because of that additional space, no one organization doing food systems work necessarily needs this warehouse that could probably fit 5 of the room we're in right now into that one warehouse. And so we're all able to flex and use that space to our needs and kind of work together to try to puzzle piece it out, so that instead of trying to have all of those organizations, which we were just talking about how grant funding is smaller and smaller every year, and federal funds, and just the general dynamic of nonprofit work is getting harder and harder, and community work in general. And so why have us all go for 5 different warehouses when we can have one good warehouse that can host us all and have us all collaborate and connect? And with that, in our old space, we weren't able to do, I think, probably a 10th of what we're able to do now. And that's not just for the food hub, but just in holding community. And so going back to Ryan's box program, not only is the food hub's warehouse able to be used over the weekend to run that We Feed Us program with Casey tenants, because Camby's is using most of their part of the warehouse over the week. And so on the weekend, it's free, and I can just use it for the Casey Tenants We Feed Us program. And so that's kind of, working within the time continuity of everything. And on one Saturday in November, we were able to host that first grocery program and have it in our cold storage so that your drivers could come and pick it up. And then later in the afternoon, we had the space to host a bench build with Sunrise to build all these beautiful bus benches across the metro. And then the next day, we did a We Feed Us program where we packed 500 boxes and had 30 different Casey tenant volunteers come in and pack those. And so sometimes it is just as simple as having enough warehouse space, physical space that we can freely use. That is such a strong problem that we often have to go to for any of our community problems. If we don't have the trucks, we don't have the cars, we don't have the cold storage, everything else is just going to rot on the vine. We need the connection not only of people, but the physical infrastructure to connect things. And so I'm really happy to be over at the Canby's Markets warehouse, and we're all working together to form an incredible food system together, and also organizing system.
Thank you, Thomas. And I had the pleasure of going this week to go tour, and it was so great to see, all those different organizations in the same space and be able to just talk to each other instead of having to organize a meeting or, a Zoom call. They can literally just, walk a few feet and be able to talk about a challenge. So this audience, I know, includes farmers and friends, and all of you care about this issue. Let's talk about how people can plug in. So Raymond, let's start with you. If people are interested in learning more about the intersection of transportation and food, or the Sunrise Movement, or other thoughts, what can they do?
Yeah, you can check us out online on social media, things like that. Sunrise Movement KC. I think overall, really, just the things to keep in mind are, like I mentioned before, understanding what resources you hold right now and how those can be put to use. So something that comes to mind for me that I think maybe a lot of folks in this room might find silly, but we are in Sunrise a lot of young folks. We work within whatever limited resources we have. So something that I have many memories of coming up is like a question of, we have this thing we're trying to do this weekend. We need this moved. Does anybody know someone with a truck? So, like, even something as small as that, where you don't necessarily need to be the person that is leading a campaign to change whatever policy, but if you have a truck to provide, if you have space to provide, thinking about what Thomas was just saying about the shared space, our bench building project that we did where we have been able to install over 40 community-made benches at bus stops that did not have them around the city is that that really was pretty deeply tied to our food systems organization. So we had a fundraiser event hosted at Mannheim Gardens, which was great, and we were able to actually raise the initial funds for the benches, and then later on, to actually build the benches, collaborate with organizations like Camby's and with the Food Hub to actually have a space to build those benches. So even if that work wasn't directly tied in, there's always ways to connect with, whether it be space, whether it be vehicles, your time, your energy, whatever that might look like.
Thanks, Raymond. Other thoughts? So people that are interested in learning more, getting involved, what are some calls to action for this group?
So we have events coming up starting April 22nd. We have our Earth Day. May 2nd, we're doing a diabetes prevention, health and wellness program with University Health. June 6th is our Kansas City Jazz in the Garden event. You're welcome to come out to any of those events. Currently, we do give away food through a food distribution program every week. We pick up food from the UPP program, and then we're able to give that food away to 250 families throughout the whole year, and we're providing close to 50,000 pounds of vegetables to the community throughout the year. So if you could be a liaison to help us distribute food in the community, that could help. We always take in volunteers. Our first volunteer day is coming up Monday. We have another one on February 21st, the February 28th. And so if you go to our website at global1urbanfarming.org, you'll be able to click on volunteers and come out and volunteer for any of our programs. We're looking also for advisory council to kind of assist us in some secretarial work, some administrative work. And so if you'd like to volunteer, you can check out our page that way and also follow us on Facebook.
I think for us, we just opened applications for our what we call our Abolitionist Freedom School. We launched it in February of last year. It's a 14-week intergenerational program. 60% of the students are in high school. The other, about 20% are adults and 20% are elders. And you learn everything from how to organize within your community, how to organize nonviolent direct actions. You learn about Black history. You learn about things that are not being taught in school, unfortunately. And it's it's an amazing space. And there's really, there's not very many places for intergenerational knowledge transfer within our communities. And so that is a program I would highly recommend anyone who's interested to apply to that program. So I think that's one way. We also, as I mentioned earlier, we have our mutual aid team. And so in addition to things that we do around food, we also have a free clothing program where we accepted, I think it was last week, where we accept clothing items specifically for women and babies. And we distribute that, I would say, on a bi-monthly basis. We also do it around wintertime as well. So if anyone's just interested in general mutual aid, that's definitely a way to be involved in our organization. And as I mentioned initially, we're a media organization. So if anybody likes to write about food or do any kind of media around food, food justice or anything of that sort, then we're always seeking writers as well.
Thank you. Thomas?
Yeah, Casey Food Hub's a business, and so I'm not gonna ask for volunteers on that one. But for KC tenants, we're not really, we don't have many events coming up or anything. We don't have, it's definitely going to be a much more loose set of words I would give you on that would be that we're, when you have a leaky faucet or something, if you guys are renting, it's not that you're calling KC tenants to come fix it or to bring a building inspector. That's not what we do. We're about building power and empowering people to build that within their community. And so what I want to invite everyone here to do is feel energized from the conversation that we just had. I think it's, okay, I think it's working. Feel energized from the panel discussion here. Feel energized by the conversations you had all throughout the this whole beautiful event. Feel energized from, okay, yeah, thanks. Feel energized from all of the incredible people around you. If striking tenants can make a win down south of KC and put their homes on the line for a 5-month rent strike, to my knowledge, and for better living conditions, and being constantly harassed by that landlord every single day that they lived in that apartment, and still came out the other side with all of those evictions gone, with all those lease and non-renewals gone, with all of their new leases lower than before, with all of the repairs they asked for getting done. If that can get done, anything can get done. Do not let doom and gloom in the news push you down and make you feel like you can't do what you need to do. The people around us can do it. We can feed us, we can save us, everyone in this room can save us, and let that be the lesson. If it not getting involved with KC Tenants directly or one of the other organizations here directly, let it lead your life.
Thank you. So as you heard, did you have? No. Okay. So as you heard, change is possible, and when these systems that we are in feel overwhelming, please think back to this panel, because there's changes happening in transportation, there's changes happening in housing, there's changes happening in health, there's changes happening in media, all related to food. And it is easy for someone in isolation to feel like they can't do anything. But we have just heard in this last hour that change is possible, and it's happening right here in this community. So as we close out, I just wanted to lift up some of the things that we heard today. We heard about how what we pay attention to grows. So, just thinking back to the story that Star told about that one vendor who was paying attention to them coming back to him every week and saying, maybe I should find out more, and then inviting her in to learn, and is now a mentor for her. So paying attention can really see things bloom. We saw that you can do so much more together than you can by yourself. And we saw all these speakers talk about how they were able to be in community and do even more than they even thought was possible. And so, going back to the theme of growing in community, think about who's in your circle and who needs to be in your circle to help you grow. And then I just wanted to lift up the power of storytelling here. There's one thing that I read a couple weeks ago that talked about how it's your duty to share your story. And so if you are doing something in isolation, it cannot grow unless you're telling other people about it. And so I just want to express appreciation for our panel here, Raymond, Thomas, Star, and Ryan. Help me join and thank them. Thank you to Cultivate KC. Thank you to all of you for showing up today. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Brian.